helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Hi everyone, welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. Are you looking to give your brain a boost? A lot of us might be complaining about brain fog, or maybe your teens are trying to study. Certain supplements actually can be helpful to increase mental performance. So we're chatting with naturopathic Dr. Jennifer Stagg about something called nootropics. Thanks for being with us, Doctor.
Thanks for having me.
So nootropics, if you're seeing it on social media, maybe it sounds like a funny word, but I'm seeing a lot more of people putting things in their coffee, people taking these supplements, say, oh, it's giving me energy, it's like nature's Adderall. So first of all, what is a nootropic?
Yeah, so a nootropic is basically just a substance that enhances your cognitive function, and that could be like your focus and concentration, it could be memory, just how fast you're learning, I would say, which is certainly attractive for a lot of people, especially like young people.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess a lot of people might know the drugs that people use for ADHD, especially younger people, like Adderall, Vyvanse, stimulants like that. So is it sort of the same, only milder, or it's nature's, I mean, is it fair to call some of these things nature's Adderall?
Kind of, yeah, because Adderall and Ritalin, those medications are nootropics as well. So those are like pharmaceutical nootropics for a condition, a specific condition. These are all sort of, most of them that are really effective are plant-based medicines, and then there are some other like natural ingredients that are used in different formulations, like just something like L-theanine, for example, which we often use for anxiety or stress relief, also has this nootropic benefit.
Okay, and L-theanine would be something that is in green tea, which is why we often say drink green tea, even though there's a little caffeine.
Yeah.
It actually can relax us.
Yeah, so it has this calming effect on the nervous system, but green tea is a great example that has nootropics because it has L-theanine, and caffeine, it, of course, is actually a nootropic as well.
Okay, so well, that's one thing. If you're wondering, well, I don't know what this nootropic thing, what is it? But if you're drinking coffee, then that's a nootropic.
Yeah, exactly. So that helps enhance focus, and there's so many different studies on that.
And we know it.
Yes.
And if you don't drink the coffee, you're like, I need the nootropic. No, but we call it caffeine. I need caffeine.
Yeah.
So that's one of them.
And people don't necessarily always notice how it is helping with focus when you drink it on a regular basis. It's until you don't drink it. Or for someone who, and then you're really feeling more sort of like caffeine withdrawal, because caffeine is a has drug activity to the brain. But for someone who doesn't drink caffeine and then they have a little bit of caffeine one day, like they will very much notice a difference in their focus and like thinking ability and clarity level, like more so.
The first time that you let your kids have some coffee because they have to pull an all-nighter and they're like, whoa! Okay, so I want to talk about it because if you're seeing it on social media and you're wondering, a lot of this is over the counter. I mean, you can walk into a health food store, Whole Foods, you could go online. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're not wasting our money and we're not hurting ourselves. So let's talk about that. Like, a lot of people right now are doing something with their coffee, which is already caffeine. But this coffee is bulletproof. People might know that brand. And it's enhanced with lion's mane, which I've heard about. What is lion's mane?
Yeah, so lion's mane is just a mushroom that grows even around here on kind of dead wood, basically, like fallen trees. And it can be used like in culinary applications, meaning like people eat lion's mane, but it does have this wonderful traditional medicinal purpose and effect as having a nootropic effect, meaning like it can enhance cognitive function.
Okay, so this is not a scam. When you're seeing it on social media and people are saying, I am tried this lion's mane, it's making me have so much more energy, I'm so much more productive. People really do experience that.
Yeah, and I mean, with coffee, obviously this has coffee in there too, right? Yeah. So the caffeine in there is enhancing brain function, but then there's this added benefit of adding in the lion's mane. So it's kind of like hard to tease out like how much benefit that is, but like a lot of supplements will have lion's mane on its own, and then that on its own without the caffeine in there definitely has been shown to be helpful.
I've also been seeing that where people are saying, I gave up my caffeine and now I do lion's mane. And now I'm doing these special mushrooms. You know, they won't even call it lion's mane at first. They'll just say, putting mushrooms in my coffee. Right. Or I'm putting mushrooms in my drink in the morning rather than coffee. I replace my coffee with mushrooms. Yeah. So let's talk about that. For people who are actually just trying to add this because they need more energy, they need more focus. is that a good idea to do something without caffeine?
So mushrooms are very safe. Like, I mean, you can eat these mushrooms. They're very, very safe things to use. Some of them are more nootropic than others. So something like lion's mane is a strong nootropic. Reishi mushroom is a strong nootropic. Some of the blends I'll see will have like chaga mushroom in there, and that's another sort of medicinal mushroom, but it has more of a benefit for immunity. So some of these mushroom blends are doing multiple things. Chaga on its own is not really a nootropic, but that's a nice thing to have as well. Who doesn't want to have enhanced immunity too?
Okay, so like you might see something like this at the store. This is actually called Brain Boost, Japanese matcha with green tea, ginkgo. We've heard about ginkgo biloba. I think for a long time people have heard about, though, ginkgo is the memory tree or something like that.
Yeah.
So super green tea. This is something that people would use also for energy and focus, and it's legitimately has some benefits.
Right, exactly. So the green tea itself, as we talked about, is nootropic on its own, but this, you know, how they're putting it together and marketing the product as having a brain boost is this addition of ginkgo, and then there's some berry extracts in there as well. And ginkgo is a nootropic. People with ginkgo, you want to be careful if you're on for people who are on blood thinners. I would say that's the caution with that one. But for most people, ginkgo is like a very safe herb to consume, and certainly like in a tea formula, there's not going to be like as strong quantities or as high quantities as you would get in some capsules or even some of those little liquid ginkgos that you can buy.
I'm thinking of the applications because we're also reporting on a nationwide Adderall shortage. We're also, maybe if your children have ADHD, there are some parents who don't want to medicate, want to try other things first. So let's even talk with an actual condition like ADHD. In your practice, do you use nootropics to treat it first?
Yeah, so historically, a lot of the formulations that we use for treating both adults and kids with ADHD will have some nootropic herbs in there. So even something like rhodiola can be really beneficial for people who are having difficulty with concentration and have even been categorized as having ADHD. And then some of these other ingredients like L-tyrosine, L-glutamine, even creatine is kind of interesting that people use this to enhance muscle mass and to like put on muscle when they're working out. Creatine has nootropic benefit as well.
It can actually help with our focus too. Yes, I know. My son wanted to quote unquote get jacked, and I called you to say like, is it okay to give him creatine? He said yes, just make sure he's drinking lots of water.
That's right.
And this goes without saying, I got the creatine from your office.
Right.
Or you would have given me the brand, and I could have ordered it from the distributor. We really want to make sure when we're getting any of these things, there's a lot of marketing out there.
Right.
And if you're taking something that, at worst, it might just be, you know, at best, it might just be wasting your money. At worst, it could be harmful if there was other ingredients in there that you shouldn't have.
Right, exactly. And I worried about that more so with bottles of herbs versus like a tea. You know, a lot of the teas are just, you know, they're so mild in their effect. But when you start taking like higher doses in capsules, and that's often what we're using, you know, a lot of times like a tea like this is not really going to do, you know,
it's
have
a little
benefit for like a condition like ADHD.
Yeah.
But when we use products, then we want to have reliable companies like Designs for Health, which is a Connecticut-based company, Standard Process, which distributes MediHerb, which is an excellent Australian company that has top quality herbs as well.
So, I mean, this is called Neuralink, and this is made by Designs for Health. And this is something that I'm just going to read some of the ingredients, but you would use this for people who might be battling a whole bunch of things. They need focus, maybe they have some anxiety, but there's L-tyrosine, GABA, L-glutamine, inositol, taurine, and 5-HTP.
Yeah.
So this is called Neuralink, and I guess the idea is something like this. It is a little stronger, but it helps your brain function better.
Right, so it's going to have a little bit more of a benefit on neurotransmitter function as well. So helping with things like dopamine production, serotonin production as well. With that, a type of product like that, which is why it's more a practitioner blend, it has 5-HTP in it, so you really want to be careful for a patient who is taking an SSRI, so something, a medication for mood, that like anxiety or depression, that would increase serotonin levels, because that could like be too much for your system, basically.
Right,
Yeah.
but sometimes you might use them in combination and it would keep your doses lower if you don't want to go up on your prescriptions.
Right.
Now this is something you really really need to work with a doctor
Definitely, I would say, yeah. So it's not that we never use that, but like depending on the dosages, like someone who's very capable and trained with natural medicines would be able to advise on dosing in that case.
So let's just give the warnings. We've talked about nootropics and maybe something you want to add if you, especially as we get into our 40s and 50s. You say a lot of women, I'm sure men too, they come to you complaining that they just feel more brain fog in those perimenopause, menopause years. That's a real symptom.
Yeah.
And so that's where these nootropics can really help.
Yeah, they really shine in that population because the nootropic benefits are more noticeable when you're starting to have some level of cognitive decline. I'm not calling us senile. However, when you have a little bit of cognitive decline and you're not, having like actual full-blown dementia, vascular, or something like Alzheimer's disease, then that is a really great place where these products, as I said, shine. They actually would have much of a more noticeable benefit. And you take these over time also. Like you can have some people are very sensitive and they can notice it like the day that they take it. And depending on dosage levels, like taking a higher dose of ashwagandha, for example, can really have more of a benefit with focus and concentration, but it also has these benefits that like build over time as well.
Yeah, so I definitely want to talk about ashwagandha because that's something that's almost become more mainstream. People are talking a lot about ashwagandha and all that, but let me talk about first, if you're doing something like this, how long does it take to notice a difference?
Yeah, so it really depends on the person. So some people within days, they can notice a difference with it, but a lot of people, we often say like 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes up to 6 weeks for things to really provide more of a noticeable benefit.
And if you follow, I follow some, great psychiatrists online, like Dr. Amen, or people like this, who tend to have a more integrated approach. And even though they're MDs, more and more this is becoming like, hey, you're not stuck with the brain you were given. We can really make some changes, even with or without the prescription drugs.
Right, yeah, for sure. There's more and more studies around this showing the benefits of using herbal medicines to enhance brain function. And it also does things like a lot of these plants, some of the nootropic benefit of what's happening, why it actually has this effect, how these are working, is that they are protecting the brain from like neurotoxins. There's antioxidant effects that are also protecting the brain. It improves like glucose and oxygen supply to the brain and just overall like perfusion of blood through the brain. So this is why a lot of these work. And of course they have to actually cross the blood-brain barrier and actually get to the brain is another important aspect of it.
So we can talk about good, better, and best, right? So best, you might go to a naturopathic doctor like yourself, Whole Health Wellness. You're located in Farmington, but a lot of those appointments are online, so you treat people kind of all over Connecticut and even outside the state. Yeah. So that would be best. Like, let me go to a naturopath. But there are people, and a lot of us, who are going to walk in and go to Whole Foods or another store like that and say, I need something. And this looks good, brain boost. So let me just talk about some of the general problems people might be facing, and you say what the nootropic could help, okay? So energy and focus.
Yeah, so I would probably do something like a green tea enhanced formula, but it could be just like green tea itself. If someone was not drinking green tea, like maybe they switch over to green tea. And the same like with a coffee, like maybe they're drinking coffee, but we think about like, okay, try a coffee with lion's mane in it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's often what you said, even the little kids that you treat with ADHD, you'll first try them on black tea?
Yeah, like a little bit of like half a cup of black tea. It really, again, like the caffeine and the L-theanine and other polyphenols in tea can really help with cognitive function.
Even more so than coffee?
Yeah, I like the combo because it has more L-theanine in it as well. So it sort of like calms the nervous system while balancing out as well. Yeah,
that's something that if you're interested in this and you follow someone, I'll suggest you follow Dr. Daniel Amen, a psychiatrist online, but he talks about L-theanine all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because this is kind of wordy stuff for people, but I think it is becoming more mainstream of like, oh, I can do this kind of thing. All right, so let's say you're suffering from depression and anxiety. What do you go to?
So I love rhodiola in that instance. So rhodiola schizandra is a good combination, and in herbal medicine and plant medicine, medicine in general, historically, a lot of these herbs are combined together because they have synergistic effect. So that's why a lot of times we recommend combinations, but this particular one is really fantastic for helping with anxiety and depression. Rhodiola, though, I would caution, you really want to be careful about in bipolar disease, because it could potentially trigger a manic episode. So any patients who have bipolar disorder, I don't recommend rhodiola for them.
But if you're feeling a lot of moodiness or even and brain, I'm talking about, especially, I know you have a lot of women in your practice, but as we talk and we learn that some of the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause are moodiness,
brain fog,
all that. So this is also good for women who are experiencing, like, my brain's just not, I've got so much stress and I can't focus the way I was, and I'm moody. So
absolutely. And the other thing I love about this is it has the other herb in there, Schisandra, which a lot of people are not familiar with. It's more like a Chinese herb. It's like the 5 tastes. It has all these different, if you taste the berry, it's like a berry. That's pretty yummy, actually. But it really has this affinity for the liver and to help enhance detoxification with the liver. And we always think about that for women who are perimenopausal and menopausal as well, to support liver function too.
Ashwagandha, we hear about that a lot. And I always think it's hearing it more stress management, but it's also for focus, or how do we use ashwagandha?
Yeah, so ashwagandha is considered an adaptogen. So a lot of these herbs are considered adaptogens, which means that they bring balance to the body and they can be used over a long period of time safely. So that's the basic definition of an adaptogen, and we know that it helps to support what we call adrenal function. So your adrenal glands are sort of like your stress glands. Is how we think about them.
Those are those little ones on our backs,
they sit like right near your kidney. So there's like a set attached, basically, like close to each kidney. And ashwagandha is one of those herbs that is, a long history and tradition for stress, and it's more of a milder herb for that, tonic herb, but it does have this nootropic benefit as well. So if someone were like my son, for example, who's a college student, he takes ashwagandha on a regular basis, just daily, to help manage the stresses of college life. But if he really needs to focus, I've recommended for him to take a higher dose. So then I'll have him take 3 instead of just his daily 1 or 2.
So ashwagandha is something that young people are using as well. And these are very safe.
Ashwagandha is extremely safe. That's a very nice, gentle herb that we don't see problems with, unless someone had an allergy. I guess is probably the only thing, which we rarely run into.
In fact, before we had modern medicine, which is really the last 100 years. I guess for thousands of years before that, I think I read that rhodiola they used to send people off to war in Russia. It gave them more energy. They thought it made them stronger and could fight longer.
Yeah, so there's such long safety profiles for a lot of these herbs, that goes back way longer than most medications, right? A lot of our medications have, have just been around for a few years, really, and relative.
And I'll just share my own personal experience. And again, I think everybody, what's nice about these is you can experiment and you're not causing harm. But I take something that is an adrenal assist, because years ago it was okay, your adrenals, not you, all the stress and mom and busy job, and we work here where we kind of run on stress. And I think in some ways I like stress because it keeps me stimulated. But anyway, so it's to manage just daily stresses. And I have gotten to the point where I kind of know, I'm very sensitive, I've learned, but I notice if I don't take it. I kind of don't feel that, I don't know, I feel a little more sluggish. So that can, we can really tell if it's helping.
Yes, for sure. So a lot of patients can notice and are very sensitive and perceptive about their function, right? So you're probably really in tune with how you feel, and then that will be noticeable when you skip a dose of it. And really, you're with these particular types of herbal medicines with the purpose that we're talking about, the measurable, is it working, is really subjective, right? It's only, I can only really assess that with a patient in terms of asking them, how are you functioning? Is your memory, do you feel like your memory's a little bit better? It's just sort of day-to-day activities.
So, all right, so let's talk about, we talked about if you needed to focus and energy. But let's talk about memory. What if you are at that stage where you feel like you're forgetting a lot and you're wondering, like, do I need to get tested for early Alzheimer's? People will say that, but if memory is an issue, we see all those ads on TV for other things like Prevagen and this and that. So what would you take from memory?
Yeah, so I would probably do rhodiola and ginkgo then. Like that's a nice combination. I really love ginkgo for memory, especially as we age. That's a nice combination, and then the rhodiola is in there, of course.
And that's made by, this is actually by Standard Process.
Yeah, so it's Standard Process, and they partner and distribute for MediHerb, and MediHerb is a Australian company.
But if someone can't go to the naturopath or doesn't want to, can you go on the Standard Process website and order?
Yes, you can still get this directly, like online.
So that one is, if you're, rhodiola is in both, but the rhodiola with ginkgo has a little bit more for memory, and the rhodiola schisandra,
I would say, is more sort of like a brain fog sort of profile, or not even like, you may not even have brain fog. You may just want, like, to be functioning at top notch, right?
Yes.
Like, I like to take this because I want to be able to, think clearly and really have like quick reactivity and retain things more quick, right?
Yes. Better. Okay. Right. And that's something that, now, if you're already feeling like you're kind of okay, like I'm pretty good, I'm a good student, or I'm this, I'm that, would you take it just to enhance it, like to make it to that next level, like how athletes take things to make more muscle?
Yeah, so you certainly can do that. The effects are not going to be as pronounced as it would be when someone has like a little bit of like an issue, I would say, right? If you're having a little bit of an issue, you're gonna notice a more benefit from it. But it doesn't mean you won't have any benefit. So especially for college-age kids, 20-somethings, so, they're all, like, this has become trendy, right? Where they're using these things to retain information better, also just to like learn things more quickly. Basically, it's kind of proposed to increase intelligence, which it kind of can if it meets all of those categories, right?
Okay.
But it wouldn't take your IQ up like 30 points,
right?
It's just like you could potentially have like an easier time like learning a new skill, for example, or as like young people go into new jobs and they're like training and having to learn a lot of new information, this could make it a little bit easier for them.
Okay. But in general, you want to take it every day, not like, oh, I have a big day today, so I'm going to pop one of these.
Yeah.
It's not like, where if someone takes, if you've ever taken an Adderall or you have ADHD and you take it, sometimes people don't take them every day. They might take the weekends off, but you feel that Adderall hit.
Yeah.
And they know, okay, my medicine is working.
Right.
It's
you're not going to feel that.
It's not like that.
It's not going to be like you take 6 or 3 ashwagandha and you feel like you just took an Adderall.
Okay.
But it can have maybe like 50% of that effect. Like, it definitely could be certainly noticeable.
Especially if people are having problems with things like stimulants. They feel too shaky, they don't like how they feel on them. You hear that from people, like, all right, fine, it might help me at school, but I do not like how I feel on this.
Yeah.
These are kinder, gentler versions.
Right, exactly. And we'll even have patients that come to our clinic who are describing exactly that. Or they're also, having some side effects from their medication, like it works, but they are having like nausea and they're not like getting the proper nutrition because they're not hungry. And they're ready to like try something else. And even like their doctor, their prescriber is like, okay, well, maybe we look at some other options now. Okay.
Now, if you're trying to go to your regular doctor, your regular MD, primary care, and say, hey, I want a nootropic, they're not, let's just talk about this, they're not trained in herbal medicine the way a naturopathic doctor is. Different forms of med school.
Correct, yeah. So it's built into our curriculum. Like, we have 5 classes alone in just botanical medicine, like studying herbs. And then we have like each one of our clinical courses would contain like treatments that are herbal based, as well as like prescriptions and vitamins and nutrients. So we cover all of that. But our education, or basic education around herbs, is built into the curriculum along with all the other like medical science.
So I'm going to play the devil's advocate, because obviously your doctor might be great when you've got a really serious condition, you've got cancer, you need help with all these things, or heart disease, and you're not saying that none of that, you sometimes need a medication.
Absolutely.
But if they go and say, well, I don't know, this isn't approved by the FDA, I don't know anything about it, I don't know if I would take it, that might be a common response, not because it's dangerous, but because this is not something that a traditional doc is going to be very schooled in. Is that correct?
Right, exactly. And they're not going to want to, put any recommendation into something that they don't know about.
Yeah.
Like, I certainly wouldn't want to advise a patient on a product that I don't know about. But I would say, well, I don't know, we should probably use something else. So, that makes total sense when patients go to their primary care doctor or they're seeing a specialist and they're bringing in like a bottle and say like, oh, I heard about this, can I try this? What do you think? They're usually going to be presented with like, I don't know anything about that, right?
Yeah,
but I get referrals from specialists who are, their patients come in and they're asking these questions and they don't know, and they're like, okay, well, you should go see Dr. Stagg or go see someone in their practice. Like, they can help you out with that.
Yeah, and so best is the integrated approach, which is what we talk about in CURES so much, like the marrying of both. But this is just, if you want to treat yourself, let's just talk about, in the last couple of minutes, food. We already talked about coffee.
Right.
But there are foods that have a natural nootropic effect too that we should really put in our diet, and more importantly, probably take out some of the other ones that actually cause more brain issues, like sugar, right?
So first of all, it's like cleaning up your diet, like taking out all that junk, preservatives, chemicals in food can act as brain toxins. So all that stuff really needs to be cleaned out. And then you should be adding in brain healthy food. So like the big ones we think about there are like teas, like herbal teas, green teas, like those are very rich in like flavonoids and polyphenols that are great for the brain. Dark berries, so blueberries, blackberries, but especially blueberries. Blueberries on a regular basis, if you eat like a half a cup a day, have been shown to reverse reverse cognitive decline by 2.5 years. So it's pretty, like, a lot of this is medical science and studied in terms of food. The other things that I always recommend would be nuts and seeds, especially walnuts. So walnuts really just have this wonderful like affinity for the brain in terms of the types of nutrients that are in there. Fatty fish, I would say, is another big category.
Yeah, we hear a lot about omega-3s, and I think I know you've recommended it for myself, for my kids. Like, pretty much you think everyone needs to be taking an omega-3 supplement?
Yeah, so omega-3s, I mean, most people don't eat enough like fatty fish to have the adequate levels of omega-3s in their system, and that's often even a blood test that I'll run on patients so you can check for your omega-3 levels, and rarely will we see them being fine unless a patient is already taking like an omega-3 supplement, a fish oil supplement. There's one word of caution. There was a study that came out a couple of years ago on atrial fibrillation and omega-3s that it could potentially make things worse. So for my AFib patients, I have them not on omega-3s right now until we figure out what the deal is with all of that. But generally, for most cardiovascular issues, omega-3s have like a huge benefit and great safety profile. So that's a really specific
eating
condition.
like salmon and stuff.
Right, like we wouldn't say like, oh, you have AFib, don't eat salmon anymore.
Right. So, but if you don't want to buy they can get expensive adding all these things in. But basically you're saying it's safe to experiment, and this is not just a social media trend. It's something that you learn about. Nootropics are there. So pass this episode along. You can watch on the you can listen again on the CURES podcast. We would love it if you like and subscribe, and also follow me on social media at Kara Sundlin and at Dr. Stagg. We can find you both. So we'll share this and get the word out about nootropics. Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a great day and be well.